All right. Hello, everyone. I'll turn on my desktop once I send out the email here. Okay, just sent out the live stream link to the email list. I'll give people a few minutes to trickle in. Oh, I see we got 4 viewers, and my analytics thing down here is not refreshing. That's okay. Say hi in the chat if you're here. And for the folks on Discord, I have the EDM 101 channel going. So if we need to do any video chats or voice chats in real time, let's try using that. Cool. I see you there, Cameron. What's up? There we go. Okay. Hello, EDM fam. Sorry. Okay, my desktop is back on. Okay, great. I guess we can wait one more minute. I know. Apologies to the 2 in-person students that I had to cancel the in-person part of this today. I'm streaming to y'all live from my home office. But I know Kadam said he was running around a little bit, so maybe we'll give him a minute or two. But we did get a couple homework submissions this week, so from Kadam and from Cameron. So we'll give those a listen. If anyone else has a homework submission or even something that's partially finished, feel free to send me the SoundCloud link and we can give it a listen here on the stream. Don't be shy. Any work is fine, and we can find some good things to highlight about it. So, but if you didn't do your homework, that's also fine too. Actually, Cameron, since you're on, why don't we just go ahead and start by listening to your track? Actually, even before we do that, so today's lesson is going to be an introduction to music theory. So I know we've talked a lot about rhythm so far, drum programming, where to put samples, like the voice samples we used in the demo last week, how to put those on the grid. But we haven't really talked too much about like what notes do you play, or how do you make a melody, how do you make a chord progression. So we're going to get into that today. Give you some tools to either make some chord progressions of your own, or understand how, when you look up a chord progression online, how to translate those chord names into notes in Ableton, and also show you some MIDI effects that can help you basically give you some guardrails so that you won't play any wrong notes. Ableton 12, the latest version, has some nice features that can like highlight the notes that are in the key of your song. So that way you can be sure that if you play those notes, you'll be safe. At least it should sound decent. We won't really talk too much about like music theory that goes outside of what is called diatonic harmony. Diatonic just means like all the notes are within a single scale. But this will be enough, and so I think some of y'all might have some understanding of music theory already, so this might be a little bit of a review. But we're also going to talk a little bit about chord voicing, which can be useful even if you already understand like what chords are. And then today we're also going to move away from the 4 on the floor house techno kind of styles we've been looking at so far. That's why mentioned in the Discord that we're going to use the trap sample pack that I sent out last week. I also reposted that in the Discord. And so we'll play around with kind of more like hip hop style beats. And I know there's a lot of Charlie XCX fans in this class, so today's demo will be based on her song 360. So don't necessarily want to play it on stream right now just because it'll have to clip it out, but I think I can just show a little bit of it, and in the when I go to post the video, I'll just like trim it out. So, so we got a submission from Chica. Excellent. Cool. So we're up to 6. We got 6 people on the stream. Why don't we get started? Copy that link, put it in here, and I'll wait for Kadam. I'll do his submission last, just in case he's able to get on the stream in time. But why don't we start with Cameron's song? So this is called Doubt. Cameron said he sampled Conclave. So if any of y'all have watched that show, very timely piece of art for us. Maybe the producers knew something about former Pope's health that we didn't. But great source material to start with. So let's give this a listen.
Certainty is the deadly enemy of tolerance. Precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt.
All right, very nice. So a few initial thoughts. I love the general kind of atmosphere that you've created here. And by the way, folks, if anyone on the stream has some feedback as well, feel free to drop it in the Discord or in the chat. Kadam, you didn't miss too much. We're just getting into the homework submissions and feedback. So we just listened to Cameron's song here. So I love the atmosphere you've crafted here. I think in your email you said you thought it maybe sounded a little bit too much like your previous track, but I don't think it's bad to have a consistent style. I feel like that's kind of we often like remember artists really well because they found a specific style and then did that really well and it became kind of their signature. So I think I like the ambience that you had in this submission and your one last week. Good use of reverb. I like your snare sample kind of like sounds like a knocking on a door kind of sound and has a nice reverb tail to it. I like that little kind of like reverse cymbal you have here near the beginning. That's always a nice effective sound effect to lead into a new section. Create this like upward rising sensation. And I think your open hi-hat, on the off eighth notes, I think you were also reversing that sample, which is a really cool use of it. You wouldn't, not the normal way you would do it, but it still works great. I like the tambourine roll ride, 16th note pattern you brought in the second half. I thought that was an effective way to build the energy. And then when you like, I guess sped it up or maybe added some extra delay on it to increase the speed of it kind of, or the intensity of it near the end to build up there. I thought that was also super effective. Loved your your use of the crash cymbals, and some of those like little flourishes you had some cool little drum fills in here that kind of helped move the song forward. Um, if I could offer any critiques, I think one would be I wasn't getting a whole lot of bass, like sub bass. I have a subwoofer here, so I don't know if that was like an intentional choice, or maybe you picked some notes that were too high or too low. Because I know in one case you have that sort of like that one single high mid-ish note, and then you kind of turn that into an arpeggio, which I thought was also really effective. Um, it provides a nice contrast to the vocal. So you might want to play around with some different uh, bass notes. If you remember the sub note frequency chart from last week, if you try to aim for your main bass to be in this like sweet spot here between 30 and 55 hertz or so. I think also too you could have made your vocal more prominent in the mix. Um, since that is kind of like the the main theme of the song is whatever he's talking about. I was having trouble following along with what he was saying, but I think you have some opportunity to have some really good storytelling because I think at the end he's saying something about like doubt walking hand in hand with faith. I mean that goes hard AF. Uh, you know, maybe that could be put more at the beginning just to kind of like set up the storyline. Um, I do thought, and you mentioned it too in your email that you dropped his voice a few steps. Um, I'm getting some Christopher Lee kind of Saruman vibes there. Always a nice way to kind of mix up a sample and give it its own feel. Um, and maybe one other thing is, I think your kick drum was very soft in the mix. There's ways of having like a really kind of subdued kick that creates this like subterranean throbbing kind of sound that I think would work really well in this kind of song. We just need a little bit more of it. It would be kind of like a kick drum without a whole lot of high end. Um, Sometimes these are called depth kicks just because they're like, really hitting those low frequencies and emphasizing the bass region without taking up too much space in the rest of the mix. Just checking the Discord here for additional comments. Let's see. Yeah, hi-hat was the same sample reversed into itself. Great, excellent. Sub bass became a bit more percussive. I think we'll take another listen here, but you may have also had it an octave too low. I thought I did hear something chugging along down there. Oh, interesting. Your vocal sounded quieter after you uploaded it. Well, we'll talk too about one technique that can kind of help bring out, can add some presence to the vocal as well. Well, it's basically an effect that we put on. I mentioned it in the email. It's called OTT, OTT, and there's a built-in Ableton preset in the multiband compressor that lets you do it. So I'll show how to do that when we get into the Ableton portion today. Try bringing the sub bass up an octave. Katam asks, is there a good way to measure if we're filling in those frequencies? I can see the waveform in EQ8, but I have no idea what's good. Yeah, so we can. EQ8 is a great tool to use for that. What I like to do is I'll take a song that I'm inspired by, or that kind of has the same sort of tone that I'm going for in my song, and then I'll bring that into Ableton. And let's say I'm trying to match the energy of its drop. I'll look at the EQ, what the EQ looks like for during the drop in that song, and then I'll try to make sure my kick drum is hitting at the same level of energy, my sub bass is hitting at the same level of energy, and then I have the mids and the highs subsequently filled in. So maybe when I bring in the Charlie XCX song, I'll show that as an example. Let's see. Any let's listen to it one more time, since now that I've given some commentary, and people can drop any final feedback or any other questions that come up. So here we go, one more time.
Precisely because it walks hand in hand with doubt.
Okay, I think I might know. So that time I did hear the sub kind of plucking through a bit more, and I think I might know what's going on with the kick. I can tell that you did the reverb side chaining technique that was in the tutorial video. So kudos to you for setting that up. I think maybe we just have a couple of those parameters set so the dry kick isn't coming through as much as we might want it to. But maybe I can post a screenshot or something, and or you can post a screenshot of how you had that set up in Ableton, and maybe I can point out. Maybe there might be a knob that's not in the right position. Cool. I see you're typing, Cameron, so I'll let you type here, and then we'll listen to Cadam's track. But it did work. Like I was getting the ambience, that reverb tail from the kick is helping to fill things in a little bit and create like a background for the rest of the sounds. So cool. All right. Oh, and somewhat unrelated question: is it possible to quick transpose an entire project? Gotcha. Let's see. Is there? I mean, you could you could export it and then pitch it up in Ableton, but that's not going to sound good. You want to move all the MIDI notes up, I guess. I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure if there's like a straightforward way to do that, because you wouldn't necessarily want to transpose the drums up, but you might want to transpose. Yeah, I would have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure. Cool. But I have done it before. I have taken a track in like B minor and put it in D minor. I think I've like just moved up all the notes manually until it sounded good. But also I wasn't like fully done with the track, so I didn't have like everything in there. So yeah. Cool. All right, let's take a listen to Cadam's track. Billy Mack drop. Yeah, when I listened to this, I wasn't sure if this was like your uncle that you sampled, like a voice note he left you, or if this is from like a movie or something. The British rom-com Love Actually. Okay, which I thought about plundering for you. The first try with Electro House Aspirations. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, let's get into it. Here we go.
Important message from your Uncle Bill.
Hiya, kids. Hiya, kids.
Your Uncle Bill.
Hiya, kids.
Your Uncle Bill. An important message from your Uncle Bill. Don't buy drugs. Buy drugs. Don't buy drugs. Become a pop star and they give you them for free.
Very nice. Let's go. All right. Yeah, a lot of great stuff to say about this. First off, right from the very beginning, I love this is a message from your Uncle Bill. Boom, right into the drop. Really effective storytelling there, I think. Um, kind of similar to the snare in Cameron's song. I love the kind of like knock timbre you have in the kick drum. I know I don't know, always feels really dancey to me. And you had that one like extra percussion hit in there. I think you probably add some some swing groove to it. That definitely helped give it that like head bumping kind of feel. Um, let's see. I like the like filter movements you were putting on the bass. Opening up the low pass filter and closing it to create like some evolution to the bass tone, and using it as not just a way to provide kind of like the foundation, but also letting it breathe more or speak more and add its own characteristic into the mix. And then what you did with the vocals was really fun, like all those kind of trippy delay kind of effects you were adding on there, giving it that like hallucinatory quality. That was super effective. Um, all the editing you did there definitely showed. There's one like micro moment, like I think right around here, where you pull out the bass ever so briefly. You just create like a little bar of like a moment of silence, and then pick it back up. Excellent stuff. Love it. And then two, the way you like around here, I think you gradually pulled the kick out, and then you had the like a slice of the vocal get louder and louder and louder. That was that definitely built some nice energy there. Oh yeah, you can get some delay automation. You can get some really crazy effects by changing different parameters of a delay. You can like get the pitch to go all over the place. Definitely fun to experiment around with. Let's see. I saw you brought in or I heard that you brought in like that extra hi-hat sample here near the end. I think it would have been really effective to bring in some additional percussion, even sooner, like around this part, like after your first little build-up section here. I think that would have, like right after that, would have been a good time to bring in some more like, percussion, maybe some shaker, tambourine, hi-hats, maybe some like, stabs, like some glitchy sort of one-shot samples that create some extra atmosphere. I think you could start bringing those in sooner, just to create more of a progression there. I think the overall mix of all the elements was good. Like the kick and the bass sounded like nice and full. Probably could have brought the vocal up even more, I think, or maybe I'll show you all that trick with the multi-band compressor, so that can often help the vocal stand out a little bit more. Let's see, I wrote down some other notes. Filter movements, great build up. Yeah, pulling away the kick. Maybe this is intentional. I think you might have had the side chaining set up in post FX mode. So as you gradually pulled the kick away, the bass kind of became more and more static instead of retaining its kind of like side chained sort of throbbing sound. So I don't know if that was intentional or not, but just make sure if you do want the bass to continue pulsing like that, make sure to put the side chain in, map it to the pre FX channel of the kick, for lack of a better word. Let's see, Chica, I thought something sounded similar. Care to expand on that? Oh, All Your Children by Jamie XX. Okay, nice. Yeah, I haven't heard that one yet. Let's see, stole no swing, but for the kit, I stole a particular 16th note from Guess and put it into the kit in the same position as in that track. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a little tom. Oh, okay. Wait, okay, we'll listen to it again, because now I want to listen for that. You wanted it to pulse more and wasn't sure how to punch it further. Okay. If you want more pulse, you would generally want to lower the threshold of your side chain even more, so the volume drops more. And then you may need to compensate by making the release setting on the compressor shorter so it recovers faster. But you'll get more of you lower the threshold to make the volume dip more, and then you raise the you lower the release so it gets back to the top faster. But maybe I'll show a couple other ideas there as well when we jump into the Ableton part here in a second. Let's see what else. Yeah, as I mentioned, adding some extra hats or percussions there. Cool. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I took away on my first listen. I think I wanted something that isn't strictly from a side channel looking to release. Okay. Don't have the verbiage to ask the question. All right, right on. Cool. Wait, who's the artist behind Guess? Is that also Charlie XCX? Oh yeah, okay. Should get her to sponsor this or something. All right. Yeah, let's run this back.
Here's an important message from your Uncle Bill.
Hiya, kids. Hiya, kids.
Your Uncle Bill.
Hiya, kids.
Your Uncle Bill. An important message from your Uncle Bill. Don't buy drugs. Buy drugs. Don't buy drugs. Become a pop star and they give you them for free.
Wonderful. Okay, I remember one other thing I would suggest is here at your like the first time you did a build up and then you brought the beat back. I think this would be a good time for like a crash cymbal or maybe even better some kind of downer sound effect. So there's a class of sound effects called downers. I think we've talked a little bit about risers where you creates kind of like an upward rising pitch motion. A downer kind of like it goes in the opposite direction. It goes down and it creates kind of like a release of tension, but also helps create some more atmosphere and ambience. So I think something like that right around the middle point to give it a little bit of sauce would be really effective. What else do we got? It comes back to Charlie. Nice. Yeah, maybe this could be your submission for the student EP. Wink, wink, everyone. All right, great work, Adam. All right, let's see what Chica's got cooking up here. Was this also inspired by a Charlie XCX song?
I sweat, I dance, I sweat, I dance, I sweat, I dance, and I had many epiphanies.
All right, nice. Okay, I know it's only 7 seconds long, but that's already the great start to the song. I think we maybe want to tighten up the rhythmic timing on some of the vocal samples. But other than that, like I can definitely hear where the song is going. And you've already got some great storytelling there in place. I'm gonna run it back. It's all good, Chica. Hey, sometimes all you need is a kick in the bass. Let's play it again.
I sweat, I dance, I sweat, I dance, I sweat, I dance, and I had many epiphanies.
Excellent. Yeah, I think just get those vocal samples tightened up, and then we are off to the races. Where's the sample from? Also, who else? Oh, the sample choice. Cool. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I think with the galloping bass line, the way to get it to throb is to make sure it has the velocity sensitivity mapped to it, so that way you can make some of the less important notes a little quieter, and that'll give it that, like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's this kind of hand motion. Yeah, definitely throw the link in here, Chica. All right, well, thanks everyone for the submissions. Great work. Oh, here we go. I laughed, I cried. Is this like the first time she took ecstasy or something?
I laughed, I cried a number of times, I sweat, I danced, I got a shot, I ate, and I had many epiphanies.
Wow. All right. Congratulations on your spiritual enlightenment, Gwyneth. Oh, okay. I was like, yeah, the part about like she ate stuff and laughed and cried, that's kind of whack, but okay. Good for you, Gwen. All right, so let's move into the Ableton portion of the evening. Oh yeah, and I remember, Cameron, you mentioned your song was partially inspired by this Kelly Lee Owens song, Dream State. I'll quickly show you how to make the bass for this because it's dead simple. So while we're in Ableton, I'll show that. So that bass, adding OTT to the vocals, and then the other thing was, oh yeah, how to get the bass to pulse even more. So, all right, let me close all the tabs. All right. Oh yeah, and we wanted to look at how to, when you're looking at the EQ, how to tell if your track is getting a good frequency distribution, which will kind of depend on the genre to some extent. Like some are a bit more subdued in the high end than others, so you don't want like a ton of high frequencies. But yeah, so let's talk about making the bass pulse real quick. So I'm just going to grab a kick drum. Not that one. Okay, this is a good one. All right, so I'll put this 4x4. We'll loop it. And then we'll grab a bass sound from Vital, let's say. We can just use, actually we'll use this multiband compressor to just make it really sizzle. And then we'll put some low pass filter on. Maybe bring up the drive, turn down the resonance. Okay, that's a pretty nasty sort of bass sound. Bring the phase down to 0, voices down to 1. Okay, and then we'll put it here. What note is that? I'll do a low D. Okay, and then I'll put the side chain on. Compressor. I know I'm going a little fast, but here's the important part. Okay, so side chain from the kick. Yeah, this is standard stuff, what we did last time. All right, that's no side chaining because the threshold is above where the kick is hitting. So I'm going to bring the threshold down. So now we're starting to get a little of that wobble. So now we can bring it down even more. Okay, so that's, I mean, I feel like that's a pretty decent amount of pulse. And then here's this release knob I was telling you about. So if we turn it up, the bass is not going to have as much time to recover from the kicks, so we don't really necessarily want that. You see how it doesn't quite get back to the top there? So that's the release is too long there. So if we can make it really short, and then it will recover even faster. So that sounds like this. And now when it's recovering faster, we can bring the threshold down even lower. So we get this kind of sound. But you hear how it's kind of not letting the bass come back soon enough because we've just lowered the threshold down so much. And one way you can further shape the sound of the sidechain a little bit is with this EQ section here. See? So this is a filter that's applied to the signal that, in this case, since we have the sidechain turned on, the EQ is being applied to the kick sample. And so right now it's on this high pass mode, so it's only letting in the high frequencies. And the cutoff is set to about 80 hertz, or it's set to 80 hertz. So there's still a decent amount of bass that's passing through this filter, and that's why you see the shape of the sidechain signal. It's kind of thick at the bottom because there's still a lot of bass there. Here, let me play it again. You'll see that at the bottom of the sidechain signal, it's like a bit wider. Right, so there's a lot of energy there, and that's causing the kick to not, or that's causing the kick to take a bigger bite out of the bass because of how low we have the threshold set. So one thing we could do is we can turn up this cutoff frequency, and that way only the transient, that tick at the high end frequency hit at the of the kick drum is going to trigger the side chaining, right? So none of the bass is gonna trigger it, and the bass kind of comes in a little bit later in a kick drum. So only that very first like tick at the beginning of the kick will trigger the side chaining. So here's what that sounds like. And now we can push the threshold even lower, like all the way to the bottom pretty much. So that's a few ways to get to kind of like dial in your like pulsing, wobbling, throbbing sort of sound in the bass. So bring the threshold down. You can bring the release down as well, or maybe up, because the tempo of your track will also matter here. Like if it's a really slow song, you might want to have the release be longer so the bass can recover, has more time to recover. And then especially for side chaining to the kick, turning up the cutoff frequency for the low pass filter here, can also help isolate the side chaining to just the very first initial percussive part of the kick, and it won't take up as much. It won't take as big of a bite out of the bass. So a couple ideas there. Play around with them. Also, I might as well mention, you don't even necessarily have to use the compressor to do side chaining, especially when you have a 4 on the floor type beat, which is very repetitive. You can easily set up other kinds of automation to get that sound. So let's say I have my bass here. I'm going to bring in a utility. So I go up and I search for utility. It's this very basic plugin. Put that on the channel for my bass. And now I'm basically going to automate the gain so it goes up and down in time with where the kick drum is. So if you remember from previous times, I'm going to right click on gain and click show automation. And then I'm going to put a point at every quarter note here, at every beat. And then I'm going to, actually the easiest way to do this is to just draw it for one of the kick drums and then copy it a few times. So I'm going to loop this and then adjust the shape of my curve until I get it just how I like, and then I'll copy it a few times. So loop that. Do this. Right, so that's another technique you can do. This one gets a little tricky because you may have to, paste this automation a whole bunch of times like depending on how long your song is, but that's another way you can get really precise control over just how the bass sort of whooshes in. All right, I heard my Discord going off. How did you make the automation line bend? Oh, yeah. If you hold, so you're talking about how I made it do this. So you want to hold down the Alt key. At least on Windows, you hold down Alt, and then when you click and drag the curve, it bends it. So you're not limited to a straight line. And by the way, if you want to reset it to a straight line, you hold Alt and double click on the line, and it goes back to being straight. So hold down Alt, click and drag it to move the shape around. And then if you want to reset to linear, Alt and double click. Is there a way to duplicate and paste only the automation? So if you have the automation layer turned on, I think, yeah, if you have the automation layer turned on by pressing the A key, then it'll only duplicate the automation, right? So it's not also copying the clip. So, yeah. Mind-blowing stuff, huh? Cool. So there's some ideas about how to dial in your desired level of bass pulse. Let's talk about adding some presence or some helping vocals cut through the mix a bit. So let's see. I need a vocal sample. Do I have? Let's see. Let me see if I have sacrifice for my other sample or for my other tutorial. Let's see. Maybe this.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
All right, yeah, this will be fine. Okay, so I bring this in. So now I have my vocal sample. So one thing, so let's put the EQ on here. Okay, we already have the EQ on here. So first thing to do generally with vocals is you want to cut out everything below, say, 100 hertz. Because usually there's often, like especially if you're sampling from a movie or like a phone video recording, there's going to be a lot of like low-end rumble that the microphone picked up. Don't want any of that, so turn on the high-pass filter. You can tell it's the high-pass because it has this downward sloping, the downward sloping part is on the left. And if you don't have EQ8, you can always use the auto filter that comes with Ableton, right? It's got a you can flip it into high pass mode and then just trim out the low rumble because we don't really need that. Excuse me. And then I can really get it precise by just playing the sample. So here we go.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
Okay, so now that's given me a little bit of headroom. Now the secret sauce, and this can be used on so many different. This can be great for dubstep basses if you want to make them really like scream and growl. It can be used for anything you want to give a little bit more presence to in the mix. But you're gonna search for OTT in Ableton. This is a preset for the multiband compressor effect. And we've talked a lot about the compressor effect in the context of sidechaining. The multiband compressor is basically 3 compressors split over 3 different frequency bands. So you have some settings for the lows, some settings for the mids, and some for the highs. And that lets you get really precise with how you control the dynamics of each range. But the OTT, which stands for over the top, I think. And by the way, if you don't have it, because I'm not sure that every version of Ableton has it, you can download X for OTT. Oh wait, that's on Splice. Should be on, yeah. Yeah, okay, it's here. So this is like a plugin that the X for Records people made, so you can get it there for free. But so once I put this on, it's gonna kind of flatten out the sound, like make the volume more consistent, and it's gonna bring the bass and the treble up. So it's gonna create this kind of happy face EQ sound, which you may have heard of. Happy face EQ, or smiling face EQ. You often see this in club systems because psychoacoustically, we humans will perceive this kind of frequency response as louder, because we already hear things in the mid range exceptionally well. So boosting the highs and the lows will kind of create a more balanced sound overall, but make it also appear louder. And that there's scientific evidence for that in this concept called the equal loudness curve, or the Fletcher-Munson curve. You can basically, like, for sounds that are in this frequency range, we can hear them really well already compared to very low frequencies and very high ones. So what this OTT plugin is basically doing is it's making the mids quieter because we don't need as much support there, and it's making the highs and lows louder, which then raises the overall volume. So, sorry, that was a lot of talking. Here's what this sounds like without the OTT.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
And then with it.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
So maybe you can hear how it sounds like the highs are more prominent now, and it sounds brighter, more open, less muffled. It does bring out a lot of the background noise in a sample, or it can, so if it's, you have to decide if you want to live with that or not. But you also don't have to put it at 100%, a little goes a long way. So I'll just loop this and show different settings for the wet dry here, the amount setting.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
Yeah, so I generally will add that onto the main. Oh, interesting. Kind of, you say it sounds more muffled. Interesting. That could be it could be some of the background noise that's being amplified by the compressor. So that's why I would, maybe if I'll just turn it up like maybe 25%. Here we go.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know,
you might have to adjust it to taste. But I will often put that on vocals that I use just to give them a little extra presence and clarity. You could also just try boosting the highs with like I forget what this kind of EQ shape is called, but it's basically like it lets you target a specific band of frequencies. Looks like some kissing lips. So you could boost, around here. That can help.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and Aaron brings up the point. If you put a low pass filter on, that can help take out some of the very kind of like the high end noise. So you could do something like cut the lows, boost here to give it some presence, put it through OTT to kind of smooth out the volume and flatten everything out, and then maybe put one more EQ afterwards just to take down some of the highs, maybe something like this.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
And then if I turn them all off, you can hear the before and after.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
So yeah, that can kind of like, yeah, just make your vocals punch through a bit more. There's also this, if you want to get real surgical with it, you can also go in and comp the vocal. So like, if I look at the shape here, and actually, Aaron, I did this with your vocal on the track of yours I remixed. I forget the name of it, but anyway, like, you know, some of these words are louder than the others. So I might come in here, you know, put my cursor here, press Control E to clip the sample there, and then I'll click on this fragment here, and I'll raise the gain up, and now it's, you know, more, it's closer in intensity to the other samples. You notice it also boosted the noise here, so I may want to like fade it in like that, and now I can, you know, now this is louder. Then maybe I want to come in here and do the same thing. You sometimes want to be a little careful with this technique because it might make it sound unnatural if like the volume jumps. But in general, this is also a nice way to make sure the volume of the sample is consistent so that you can raise it to be louder in the mix without it clipping. So maybe I want to. You also don't want to accidentally make unimportant words like the or so or louder, because that'll mess up the flow of it. But you know, now that I've comped the vocal a little bit, we get this.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know.
You hear how I made the word the a little bit too loud there, so it kind of jumped out. And you know, the is generally not an important word, so we don't want to push it too much. So yeah, so that was some of the stuff we didn't get to last time, but okay, overplayed, right? Yeah, so there's a couple ideas to process your vocals. There is, oh yeah, to your point, Aaron, there is a plugin called Gate that comes with Ableton. I think it's in most of the editions. This is a pretty simple, straightforward effect. It basically, you give it a threshold, and it, like any sounds that are below that threshold, it will just reduce to 0. So there's probably a good amount in this sample that where we can use this gate to remove those. So I would usually put this after the after I do the high pass to get rid of the lows. So just because that's like easy low hanging fruit. Then I'll put the gate in to clean up things further. You might have to adjust the attack, hold, and release settings because when it detects the sound dropping below the gate, it'll take some time to kick in, or when it detects the sound going above the threshold, it might take a moment to kick on. So you might have to dial these settings. This won't eliminate noise in the like spoken word part of the sample, but it can get rid of the noise that's like in between here, like all these little places that then get amplified by the OTT. So this can be a good one to put before the OTT to smooth things out. So I'll play with that here just to show y'all.
You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding.
So in this case,
you know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did. You know, engineering is all about finding a way to make the impossible possible. So that's what we did.
This one's a little tricky. You know, the gate doesn't always work with all samples because they may be like the important part of the signal might just overlap so much with the noise that you can't gate it out. And in principle, you can do what the gate is doing in a really surgical way by coming in and like, you know, splitting your samples at these points where it dips down and then fading them one way or the other. Like you can get really surgical with it, which, you know, if maybe if you're writing a song and you want your vocal to sound really clean, then it would be worth spending some time to go in and like manually trim out some of the noise. But if you're just trying to make something quick and dirty, or if you like the noise that's in the sample, you might want to keep it, because like in one of my in the one song I've made that's gone somewhat viral thus far, I left the noise in because it helped fill in the space, but I side changed the kick so it cut out at times. Let's see, Cameron, you asked, when the audio waveforms enable to double, is that an indication of LR left-right panning? Yes. So this is a stereo sample. It has 2 channels. They might be the same in this case. Actually, one way to figure that out is to use the utility and hit the phase invert on one of the channels, and if the sample becomes silent, then you basically just have a monophonic sample with 2 channels. So let's hear.
Way to make the impossible possible.
Yeah, it's like there's barely any there's barely any difference between the 2 channels. There's like very slight differences. That's why it like sounds, you're still getting a little bit of the signal coming through. Oh yeah, Kadam, nice call out on Ott. Fantastic producer. All right, I know we haven't even gotten to the main lesson today yet, but let's see. We talked about vocals, making the bass pulse. What was the other one? Vocals, bass pulse. Oh yeah, I was going to show quickly how to program the bass sound from Dream State. So it's basically a square wave. So I'll just reset this preset. It's basically a square wave with that envelope we had in the for the sub bass last week, and then we also have a filter, a low pass filter, to make it to give it that contour. So I'll put that on the filter cutoff here. So that gives us this. And you can do other things to it to make it sound punchier. I might want to, have the volume go all the way down. Or maybe I want the bass to be a bit darker, so I'll bring the cutoff down, and I'll bring the envelope down. So yeah, square wave is a great waveform for bass, by the way, because it has like a minimum amount of harmonic information in it. So you can push the volume really high without taking up a lot of room with extraneous harmonics. So I think, in the earlier example I showed using a saw wave as the bass. Here we're using square wave. So and I think someone else posted a Charlie XCX. The one she did with Billie Eilish also has this kind of like filtered, simple square wave bass sound to it. And like it can sound really groovy and like poppin' if you put the right pattern on it. So yeah, play around with that. Okay. Let's get into some basic music theory. All right. So far, I think we've pretty much just talked about putting like a single low note on the sub, like F, 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 F. But now we want to create like a chord progression. And why do we want a chord progression? Well, if we have a melody playing, the thing that can really bring it to life is if it has a harmonic context that it's working against, right? And furthermore, if you change the harmonic context, if you change the chord progression that a melody is being played against, it can change the whole like tone or feeling or vibe of the melody. So there's a lot of power in making the, changing up the chords. But how do we even know what chords we want? Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about a concept called the circle of fifths. So this is a diagram that you can use to help you choose chords that sound good together. Let's see, my go-to doc one is this one. Okay. So what is the circle of fifths? Well, as I've mentioned before, in Western music, each octave is divided into 12 notes. And in this circle, we have 12 pi pieces. There's, going around the wheel here. And these aren't arranged in what's called chromatic order, like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, where there's like a half step in between. They're arranged so that the notes that are 1/5 apart are next to each other. So C and G, they're a fifth apart. C and F, they're a fifth apart. E flat, A flat, a fifth apart. And what is a fifth exactly? Well, a fifth is an interval between two notes, and it's separated by 7 half steps. So if I start on C, I go up 7 half steps, I get to G. And by the way, I said the octave is divided into 12 notes, also 12 half steps. So, but why do we even care that that C and G are a fifth apart? Like, how does that help us? Well, it means that these two keys are very close together harmonically. They share every single note except one. So the C major scale, the 7 notes that make up the C major scale, the G major scale has 6 of those. The F major scale has 6 of those. If I start going further afield, like the D major scale, it has 5 of the same notes as C. And then A has 4 of the same notes, and then pretty soon you get to G flat, and there's none of the same notes. So, or one, something like that. Anyway, so basically it means you can transpose between these different keys if they're close together on this wheel very easily. And then as far as like choosing our chords, so if we look at a section that containing 6 of the pi pieces, so in this case I'm hovering over C, F, G, and E minor, A minor, D minor. So these are all of the chords that are in the C major scale. These are all the diatonic chords, the ones that only use notes that are within the C major scale. So these 6, and if you're paying really close attention, you heard me say that there's 7 notes in a scale, so where is the 7th chord? So there's a chord called the diminished chord. It's not in this diagram, I think, for simplicity reasons. There's other versions of it that show it, but it's kind of it kind of functions the same as the 5th chord in the scale, and it has its own characteristic to it. But for simplicity, I'm not really covering it. But if you're in the key of C, then you can pick any of these 6 chords in this wedge and use them. Or if you're in the key of E flat, you can use B flat major, E flat major, A flat major, F minor, C minor, G minor. You can use any of those chords. Oh, I should mention that the little lowercase m here, that means minor key or a minor chord. And the major keys, in this diagram, the major key is positioned on top of its relative minor. And all that means is that the A minor scale and the C major scale share all of the same notes. So C major and A minor are basically the same for our purposes here. So what we're going to do is we're going to make up a chord progression using a few of the chords in one of these pi pieces. I'm going to choose G minor just because. And I'm going to recreate a classic chord progression that's used in like a bazillion different songs, everything from Poker Face to Stereo Love to, just so many different songs use this chord progression. But we're going to go G minor, and then E flat major, and then hold on. Oh yeah, G minor, E flat major, B flat major, and then F major. And then back to G minor. So usually chord progressions will come back to the chord that they start on. Not always. But that's the chord progression. I'll show you how to build these major and minor chords so that when y'all are getting ready to do the homework, you'll know how to do that. Because the homework is basically going to involve y'all making some beats based on a chord progression. All right. So G minor, E flat, B flat, F. Let's get into it. All right. So first, so I said the song the demo song we're gonna make is in G minor. So one nice thing that Ableton 12 has is you can set the key for your whole project. So I'm just gonna, and it's up here in the top bar. So I'm gonna go ahead and change this to G minor. Oh, it even does modes too, so you can really get fancy with it. But I'm just gonna stick to the basics here. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab Vital, put it on a new track. And I know maybe the sound design lesson from last week was a little tricky. We're going to do another one here real quick. It's very simple, though, I promise. We're just going to use this default waveform, the saw wave, right? It sounds like this. But we're going to want something more in the mid-range because with chords, you typically, they're typically not the focal point. It can, that can vary, but these are going to be kind of in the background, helping create like that context. You know how maybe in some of the previous, I think in the techno example I showed last week, we used some like noise with a bunch of different effects on it to create kind of a background texture. We're kind of doing the same thing here, except with notes and chords, so we get kind of like a harmonic context. So we're going to use our starting saw wave, and then there's a section here that says unison. So we're going to turn that up. We're going to click on the 1V here, and we're going to drag our mouse up. Put it as high as you like. 7, 6, 5. Whatever. Doesn't matter too much. But basically, this is a very common setting on a lot of synthesizers. It basically adds more copies of the main waveform here, and then it detunes them a little bit, and so you get this really wide, lush, swirling sort of sound by default. So I just took the initial preset and I turned the unison up to 7 or so. That gives you this kind of sound. And turn it up an octave. Actually, I'm clipping here, so I'm going to turn down the volume a little bit. Right. So it's a extremely popular sound in EDM because it's very like full spectrum. It really fills up the sonic soundscape and sounds really good. So you'll hear this in tons of EDM tracks. But one more tweak we're going to do, because this is a background sound, we don't want it to have a whole bunch of high frequencies in it just yet. Maybe we want to save that for later to create like that sense of progression in the track. But we're just going to turn on filter 1 here, which is by default a low pass filter, meaning it only lets in the low frequencies. So it'll cut out a lot of the high end, and that will kind of make the sound more muted, quiet in the background. And that sounds like this. Right? Sounds more like ooh. Chica asks, is there a reason mine would sound more like static? If you have the white noise oscillator turned on, it might. So definitely don't have that on. If it looks like a saw wave and it says 7V in the unison and it says 20% here, and you're just using all the default settings in Ableton, why would it sound like you may need to turn the gain down a little bit. So there's the slider here at the top of Vital that controls the overall volume of the synth. If you see that it's getting up here into the red, that means it's clipping. So you'd want to turn the overall volume down a bit. That's a very basic question. How are you getting it to make noise? Whenever I add Vital, nothing comes out when I play keys. Right. So if you want to use your laptop keyboard, the ASDF row as a keyboard, you want to turn on this little keyboard icon up here in the top bar in Ableton. You can toggle it on and off by pressing the M key. And then last, you want to make sure that your track with Vital on it is armed for recording. You need to press this little recording icon on the track, and that way Ableton knows to send MIDI information to that channel. So and so now I'm able to, if I press the A, E, and the G keys on my laptop keyboard, I get a C minor triad. Yeah, perfect. Exactly what Kadam posted there. Oh yeah, in terms of the sound, I think I had the unison detune up really high. Right, so yeah, you can crank this up to 100% and it'll sound really like blown out. And this can sound really cool in some contexts, like in techno, you might want like a hyper detuned saw wave to give it that aggressive siren panic attack kind of sound. But more moderate value, like 20%. I have mine at 20%. You may want it even lower. Different amounts of detuning give you, if it's less detuned, it'll be a more focused sound, which can be nice for leads. And as you turn up the unison detune, you get a wider, washier, diffused sort of sound. Oh yeah. Yep, just what Kadam says. Z moves the keyboard octave down and X moves it up. And then, as we learned last week, the C key makes the velocity of your laptop keyboard quieter. So C will turn down the volume of the keys you're playing, and V will turn them up. Cool. All right, so that's too much detuning. So yeah, there we go. All right, so we got our basic sound here. There's other tweaks we can do, but to make it more, this category of sounds are called pads because they help pad out the overall mix. They're just meant to be kind of quiet in the background, but they help create that background harmonic context. So I've got my basic sound. I'm just gonna delete these other tracks for now. So I'm gonna make a 4-bar MIDI clip here. Right, I'm gonna select 4 measures of time, Control Shift M to insert a new MIDI clip. And remember how I said we put the key of our song as G minor? You can see that reflected here. I think, Kadam, you have the older version of Ableton, so I don't think you'll see this. But for folks on the latest version of Ableton, you'll see these purple highlights indicating the notes that are in the key. So there's our first little guardrail. And then if you click this scale button right here, it'll completely get rid of every note that's not in our key. So this can be super helpful for just making sure you're not making any mistakes. So I'm going to leave it off just to, maybe I'll toggle between it so you can see the difference, but I'm going to leave it off for now. So, like I said, we're going to create, we're going to do this G minor, E flat, B flat, F chord progression. So to start, we're going to first set what's called the root note of the key, and that's just the lowest note. It's the name of the key. So for G minor, the root note is G. For F major, the root note is F. So I'm going to go G, E flat, B flat, F, right? So start with let's see, I'm going to do this G2 note to start. And I'll just draw here. And then I'm going to go E flat. Sorry. I'll go E flat, which is right here. And then I'll go B flat, which is up here. By the way, each of these notes is one measure long, one whole note long, right? It goes from 1 to 2 to 3. And then last, F. There we go. So if you do that right, you should get this kind of sound. post a screenshot of that in. Oops, post a screenshot of that in the channel. All right. Now the second easiest note to add after the root is the fifth. The nice thing about the fifth is that no matter what note you're starting on in a given scale, the fifth is always going to be in the same place. This isn't the case with the third, which we'll add last, and that'll make what I'm saying make more sense now. But anyway, we're gonna add the fifth now. So like I said earlier, the fifth is 7 half steps above the root. So we're going to take our root note, the way I like to, and we're going to go up 7 half steps. So starting on G, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up here to D, draw a note there. Now we've got a fifth there. Another way to do this, for the second note here, we'll select it. We'll hit Control C to copy it, and then we'll press the up arrow 7 times. So that's on the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we'll press Control V to paste the root note back in place. Right? So that's two different ways you can figure out what the fifth is. You can either start on the note and then count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to F. Right? B flat to F. Or I can select the note, copy it, press up 7 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then paste the note back. So that gets us our fifth. It sounds like this. By the way, this fifth idea is the same interval that rock musicians and metal musicians use when they're playing power chords on the guitar, right? That those two notes, they don't really imply a whole lot of harmony, but they sound really heavy and like gritty when paired with each other. So they're super effective in a metal or rock context. Because if you add the third and you put a ton of distortion and overdrive and gain on your guitar, it's going to sound really muddy and unclear. But the root and the fifth combo always comes through with clarity. All right, so last we're going to add the third, and this one's a little tricky. There's one thing you got to remember. If it's a major chord, then the third is 4 half steps up. And if it's a minor chord, then the third is 3 half steps up. Okay, so my first chord is G minor. So I'm going to start on the root. I'm going to go up 3 half steps, and whatever that note is, that is the third in my scale. And again, these little lavender markings can help keep you on track. So copy 1, 2, 3, paste. All right, sweet. I'm on B flat. I know that's the minor third. It's a purple note. We're good. And then for our next chord, which is an E flat major chord, we're going to go up 4 half steps. So copy 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, good. We're on a purple note. Paste that again. And the last 2 chords are also major chords. So copy up 2, 3, 4, paste. Copy up 2, 3, 4, paste. So we get this. And together that sounds like this. All right. We pause there for a second. Make sure everyone was able to type in those 4 chords. Please let me know if you're not able to get there. Okay, I feel like everyone is probably getting it since I'm not seeing any chatter anywhere. Cool. All right, so another thing to point out here is, okay, so we got our chords, great, but maybe you can tell visually, certainly, you can tell by listening as well, that the chords are kind of jumping around, right? They go like, da, na, na, na. We don't necessarily want that in our chords because that's going to kind of like stick out in the listener's ear. It's going to maybe detract a little bit of focus from the thing we really care about, which is going to be our melody. And furthermore, it's also going to be harder to mix because now your pad is covering a broader range of frequencies. And so you won't be able to, it'll interfere more with other instruments. You won't be able to filter it as cleanly if you want. So basically we want to make all these notes like, if you play beer pong, we want to kiss them up. We want to make them more, we want to make them take smaller movements in between the chords, right? Sometimes this is called, so we're going to, I guess, change up the voicing of the chord as it is. So these are all chords in their root positions. We're going to do what's called inverting the chords so that it's still the same notes. They're just played in a different, or they're stacked in a different order. And it won't matter for us here because the bass note, when we add it, is always going to play the root note. So that'll help establish the sort of floor of our chord progression. But here we want to make the chords kind of be more in a consistent region. So to do that, we're going to take this low note here on our second chord, on our E flat chord. We're going to select it. And if we hold Shift and press the up arrow, it'll move the note up an octave. So we can Shift and down moves it down an octave. But you can see how we're moving it from here to up here. And that's already bringing it closer into alignment with our previous chord, right? You can even tell that like these two chords share two of the same notes, and the third note differs by exactly 1.5 steps. So that'll sound extremely smooth to the listener. And by the way, this is another way you can choose chords. You can pick one of the two neighboring chords that share two of the same notes. So if you want a really smooth sound, pick two chords that share two notes. If you want a slightly less smooth sound, pick two chords that share one note. And then if you want the least smooth sound possible, choose two chords that have no notes in common. So anyway, so we moved this note up an octave. And then we're going to take the top note here in our B flat chord, and we're going to move it down an octave. So hold down Shift and press down. And so now you can see that all the chord, like the notes and the chords are grouped together much closer. And this will also have the effect of creating this nice like kind of counter melody in the top voice of the chord. So that can also be another reason you might want to invert your chords. Like you might want the highest voice, which tends to come out the clearest. You might want it to have a certain contour to it, and that'll because that'll like maybe sound good against the main melody. So here's what that sounds. I'll do a before and after. Here's what this sounds having made those changes. And here's what it sounded like before. And one more time after. And again, you may want that more jumpy sound. Yeah, maybe that's what you're going for. But I think, if you're, as far as like rules of thumb go, to make your life easier when you're mixing and to create kind of a more coherent sound, I like to keep my chords voiced so that they tend to be in the same part of the frequency spectrum. And I do that by changing up the inversions here. Let me paste that in. As I saw Cameron has a question. Been killing me for the past 3 weeks. That's what what's that? Okay, yeah, undo is just Control Z. Easy, or like in other like in other software. And Control Y is the redo shortcut. So, or Command Y if you're on Mac. Okay. So we got our chords. Now let's add the bass notes, because we for EDM we really need that bass. We need that that deep, warm, foundational element to both to feel it in our bodies and also just to create a full sort of sound. So I'll call this pad. All right, so I gave you all some samples last week. So make sure you have those in Ableton. Open up the trap folder, and we're going to use this 808 because, which, yeah, maybe just heard the. So, an 808 an 808 synth is a really popular bass synth kind of category of sounds based on the Roland TR-808, right? This classic old-timey drum machine, but it had this amazing bass note sound in it that, it's got this loud booming timbre. It was used in, countless hip-hop and rap and trap records. And so we just called this kind of sound an 808. The nice thing about it, too, is that you can often use it without a kick drum, because it usually has like a pretty, solid percussive transient hit at the beginning. In fact, if you listen to 360 by Charlie XCX, you might notice that there's no kick drum anywhere. It's just the 808, the dum 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 dum. Like, that's the only sort of low frequency element the producer's using. So it's a really versatile sound. And of course, you can always layer in a kick if you need extra punch. But for now, let's keep it Charlie and just use the 808 on its own. So this note is a C. So we can just create a new MIDI channel, Control-Shift-T, and we can just double click the MIDI channel to open up the lane down here, drag the C sample here, and so this loads the 808 into a simpler for us, so we can start using it. So if this wasn't a C, if it was like a D or an F sharp or something, we would need to change the transposition on the synth. Otherwise, it wouldn't play in key. But since it's C, we're good to go. And thus far, we've only let's see. Why did we do some? Oh, right. Sorry. Saw your question, Kadam. Why do we do 3 half steps for some chords and 4 for others? That is major versus minor. So for a minor chord, you want to do 3 half steps, and for a major chord, you want to do 4. So I should have shown this with the scale turn on. Once we turn on the scale, it'll all the chords will look the same, right? Because the third. Well, sorry. Let me move these back. Because when we use the scale to get rid of all the notes that aren't in the key, it'll just look like they all are the same distance apart. Within the notes of the scale, they are the same distance apart, but if we're doing it without the scale, then we have to count. But actually, I'll show you how to build these chords with the scale turned on, because it's even easier. So we start with our root notes, right? Copy. Now we just go up 5 because it's a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, sorry. Oh, interesting. We only go up 4. Okay, maybe that might be slightly more confusing. Well, 4 versus 7, who's to say? But we're on 1, and we go 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste. Now we're on 1. We go 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste. Another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Paste. Okay. And then for the third, we're just going to go up, I guess in this case, 2. So copy. So 1, 2, 3, paste. 3, paste. copy to 3, paste, copy up 2, or up, press up twice, paste. Okay. But you can see it has this like fork tines kind of shape to it. And by the way, also feel free. Maybe I'll show, if we have time, I'll show how to use the 2 notes on either side of the third, because those are called suspended intervals. This is like a suspended 4 chord. This is a suspended 2 chord. That can create some nice inner movement. We'll see if we have time to get to it. Let's see. Aaron asks, how do I make sure I can hear a note when I type it in Ableton? Is there a toggle to click? Yeah. It's this little piano keyboard icon up here in the top bar that lets your laptop ASDF row, and then some of the notes from the QWERTY row, those will send MIDI information to whatever channel you have armed for recording. And I believe Kadam posted a couple screenshots. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, toggle the keyboard icon on and then arm the track for recording. All right, I see Chica's typing something too. Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, but when you press the pencil, yes. Okay, so to toggle between, I forgot about that. To toggle between the arrow and the selection arrow and the note drawing pencil, you press the B button, and you'll see that pencil is right next to our keyboard icon in the upper corner here. Don't need any of that. All right, move that back up, move this back down. Okay. Oh, I meant I would like to hear the note while you're drawing. I wonder if you could do that. It might be something that's Fruity Loops. Ableton play note when drawing it. Activate the MIDI editor preview button. So here we go. There you go. It's this headphone icon right here. So, okay, today I learned. Yeah, right there. Preview MIDI notes in the headphone icon. Anmol, I saw you typing something. Feel free to continue. Cool. So, all right, back to our 808. So we made a new MIDI note or MIDI channel. We put our 808 sample on it. Renamed to 808. Now, thus far, we've only used Thus far, we've only used the trigger mode for simpler, which is the default. So basically, no matter how long you hold down the note, it'll play the whole sample. And that's what we've used. For drum hits, that kind of is physically accurate, right? Like when you hit a drum, you can't unhit it or stop hitting it. It's just going to ring out until you, physically muffle the drum with your hand or something. But for the 808, especially if you've heard 360, the 808 hits notes are pretty short, right? It's like dum, da-dum, dum, 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 whatever. Here, if I play a note on this 808, it's gonna play this whole sample right now. Actually, I need to play a middle C until I play the next note, of course. Yeah, so that's too much. That's too long. We want a more controlled sound. We want to be able to control how long of the 808 we're going to play. So we're going to switch it over here to gate mode. And now the sample's only going to play when I'm holding it down. And then it's just going to cut off. Let's see. Actually, sorry, I'm trying to find where we can change the release of this, and I'm not seeing it. So let's switch this into classic mode, not one-shot mode. So classic. So by default, classic mode has this gate concept activated where the note is only going to play as long as we hold down the note. But here we want to be able to like press the note and then have it release pretty quickly. So maybe we'll give it a little bit more release. So that way, when we press the note and let go of the key, it'll still ring out for a little bit. We'll get a little bit of a decay in volume, so it doesn't just like cut off sharply. But we're not gonna like let it ring out forever. We just so now we can program in like relatively short notes and then have them fade out as much as we want. So all right. So now let's program in our baseline for, or like let's do a first pass at a baseline for this chord progression. So we're going to put in four measures of time, create a new MIDI clip. In this case, we're in G minor, so let's pick a really low G note. Not that one's too high. That one's too low, I think. Oh yeah, sorry. So here's what we want. Maybe you might be able to tell that this G note is too low. It kind of sounds sort of floppy, or just not very like precise, for lack of a better word. But this G note is as low as we can. This is the G note that's in that sweet spot, right? It's at 48 hertz, which fits in nicely with our sub note frequency chart. That fits in nicely here, right? G is 49 hertz here. So this is a great note to play in terms of having a nice, powerful bass. All right, so we'll draw on our G. So remember, our bass is doing the root notes of our chord. So we're going to go G, G, E flat, B flat, F. And honestly, we could copy the notes from the other MIDI track. So if we wanted to, we can select our chords here. Of course, we did these in versions too, so it won't be easy to copy them. So let's just redraw them. So G, we'll duplicate it, move it down to E flat, which is right here. And then we'll duplicate it again and move it up to B flat, which is right here. And then we'll duplicate it one more time and put it on F, which is here. There we go. Okay. So now if we play this together with our chords, we'll get this kind of sound. All right. Nice kind of full spectrum sound. I see Chica's typing. If we look at it on the overall EQ, we'll start to get a sense of what like a nice mix looks like. So this is everything together. Right. Show the chords again. Yes. So up here, like you want to, I can't see most keys until I hover. How did you switch yours to all show? Oh, interesting. Let me see if I understand your question right. I can't see most keys until I hover. Oh, I see what you mean. So when I press the scale button, it puts the note next to each key icon. Yeah, and I made sure to set my project scale to key to G minor up here too, by the way. Okay. Cool. And then, yeah, if you you can also click this highlight scale checkbox, and it will draw the lavender highlights over all the notes that are in the scale. Kind of unnecessary if you also have the scale turned on, but since scale does show you the notes, that can also be helpful. All right, so so this sounds good together. If we could put like we could put a kick drum behind it, and we could get like this is fine. We can get like a nice pulsing sort of sound. Here, I'll group these together. We're gonna take this in a Charlie XCX direction, but just to show you like one direction you could take this. Kick. Okay, so now it'll sound like this. Oops, sorry, I need a 4 on the floor beat. There we go. Okay, bring this down a bit. All right, so couldn't get it fast enough. Could you post another screenshot? Sure. It's if you scroll up a couple messages, you'll see it, but here it is again. That's with the scale turned off, and this is also after I've done those inversions to make it to make the chords flow more smoothly together. Yeah, I've only made one chord progression so far, Chica. But if you toggle the scale on and off, it'll make the chords look different. Right, I also went from here to here. This is how it looked originally, right, with before I did the inversions. And then I moved the low note of the second chord up an octave, the high note from the third chord down an octave. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. Okay, so for the 808, we're not playing any chords. We're just, we use the root note of each chord in our chord progression. In this case, G, E flat, B flat, F. So those are the 4 root notes, and the 808 is the bass. That's the low frequency tonal notes in our song that help kind of give the harmony its foundation, its grounding. Right. The 808 is playing the lowest, besides the kick drum. The 808 is playing the lowest frequency notes in our song. But if we want to make it sound a little bit more like trap or hip hop or rap, we don't want a 4 on the floor beat, right? So we're gonna make kind of a more rhythmic pattern for our 808 here. So I'm gonna delete this. I'm gonna delete this kick drum. I'm gonna ungroup this. If y'all didn't set this up, don't worry about it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna edit these notes, but I'm going to do it using my reference track, which, as I've said a few times already, is going to be 360 by Charlie. So let me grab my copy of 360. Now, I happen to know that the song, the Charlie XCX song, is at 120 beats per minute, but if you want to look it up, you can just Google it. It's at 120. Yes, it's also in C major, but our track is in G minor. All right, let me get back here. Okay, so my project tempo is set to 120. Great. Now I'm going to bring in 360. I'll put it on a new channel here. And let's see. So pretty sure, let's see, it does this. Okay, so I can tell the bass is coming in here because the 808 is pretty loud. So I'm going to make it kind of start right right where my song, right where my beat begins. I have this for reference. All right, so if I look at just this part, all right, I'm gonna risk having to, oh wait. Cadam says, I tried making bass chords, it sounded horrible. Yeah, no, don't make chords with the bass. It can work in some circumstances, but in general, it's not gonna work that well. So, all right, so if I just look, this part I might have to cut out, but we'll just play this part of the song real quick. All right, so the bass is doing dun, da dun, dun. So I might have to play around with it a little bit, but dun, 2, 3, da dun, 2, 3. So dun, dun, clap, da dun, clap, da dun, dun. So I think it sounds something like this. Let's try it. Actually, it'll be easier to hear this if I add in the clap on the 3 and the 4, right? Or sorry, on the 2 and the 4, right? So let's do that real quick. So go into your sample directory with trap, and you can either use this you can use this Murda clap goat sample if you want like a clap. There we go. Or if you want like more of a typical trap snare, you could use this Lex Luger. Or this Cashmere trap sample. Let's go with the clap. We like a clap. So new audio track. I'm gonna put the clap on the 2 and the 4 here. Okay. So let's just loop that. I might have to bring down the volume. All right, so I'm not getting the beat. I'm not getting it quite right because it's like dum da dum. Let's listen to Charlie again. Listen to me. I think we want this. Let's try that. Yeah, there we go. All right. So now we've got like kind of a, we've started to cop Charlie's style here. I know also in her track, the last note goes down an octave. So if we really want to ape her totally, we'll make these first 3 notes up an octave, and then the last note will be down. So, and this kind of gets into that challenge of deciding what key your song's going to be in, because those high pitched G notes, they're kind of like too high. The bass is kind of losing its footing up there. And I think that's why the song is in C. Because like those high notes can sound, and there's also like other production tips or tricks you can try to kind of fill in some of those lower notes. Like we could add a sub playing at this octave each time. I mean, maybe this would work. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to match the rhythm here and keep going. So if I remember, I think we keep kind of the same 808 pattern for the second 3 measures, or sorry, the second measure, excuse me. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, so we could copy these notes. Sorry, we'll delete this E flat. We'll copy this pattern here, select it and duplicate it with Control D, and then we'll move it down to E flat. So that's good. Oh, let's get our claps going the whole way too. All right, so now we get this. Okay. We're getting somewhere. Actually, I'm going to turn up the 808 a little bit. By the way, I'm going to I'll turn it up with the velocity. So I'm going to select all the notes and just max out their velocities. All right, I think the third note also has the third measure also has the same 808 pattern. Oh no, it's a little different. Okay, yeah, so there's a gap on that first note and it goes dun 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 dun. So we want something like dun dun. Let's see, dun dun da da dun dun da da dun dun da dun 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 da da, like that, I think. Dun 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 dun. Oh, it's gonna be one last hit here. Okay, like that. Oh, sorry, I need to raise the volume up there. Okay, let's see how that sounds. Okay, I think we're getting there. Let's see what the last measure sounds like. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Something like that. As you can see, the process is kind of like trial and error, using your ear. You might be able to, one way, if we're just trying to focus on the 808, maybe we just EQ, we put a low pass on Charlie, so we only focus on the bass frequencies. Done. And you can if you zoom in on the waveform too, you can kind of see where we want our 808 to be hitting. So dun dun da dun. Okay, so we need a note here. Let's say we need this note to be there. We need this note to be there, and then there's a clap on 3, so we don't need a note there. Let's see, this one, something like this, I think should do it. Let's hear. All right, so let's just check our work. I can minimize that, span this down, minimize that. Dun 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 dun. Okay, so yeah, I guess here we actually need this note to be more like right there, something like that. All right, anyway, not to use up all the rest of our time here. Will you be able to share the project after? Will be fun to pick apart. Yeah, I will share the project after. The only problem is you're on a different version of Ableton than me, Kadam, so I might not be able to. You might not be able to open it, but I could send you the stems at the very least. Not hearing any sounds out of my 808. Looks the same, but I'm not hearing it, Chica asks. Make sure the velocities of your notes are turned up. Make sure you have a sample loaded in here. You put it on classic mode. Make sure the track is turned on, right? So if this yellow button is not yellow, then click it so it's turned on. You might have to. You could try screen sharing in the Discord chat if you wanna show me real quick. Yeah, you may also need to turn up the volume on the 808. So you could do that either by turning up the track volume, or you can turn up the volume on the simpler. It starts at -12, but you can turn it up. Anyway, here's what the full version sounds like, or the full chord progression sounds like end to end with the 808 rhythm. Oh, whoops, sorry. I accidentally turned off my microphone. All right, back on. All right, so answering Chica's question about like the volume being negative here. So when the volume is at 0, that means you're not applying any gain up or down to the incoming signal, right? It's just whatever volume it's at. Generally, you can only, add a small amount of gain to tracks. This is kind of like an audio convention. And I think it has something to do with the fact that loudness of a signal is logarithmic, right? It's not linear. You can kind of see this, if I bring down the volume more and more and more and more, I get to like negative, I get to -66, and then it just goes to like negative infinity. Because from a mathematical perspective, that's the only way to make the sound be totally silent. Obviously, with computers, we can just set the output to 0. But I don't have the best explanation for why that convention is. But I usually it has to do with like headroom. So usually tracks are set so that when they hit 0, they're not clipping. And if they go beyond 0, they are now getting clipped and they sound distorted. But yeah, you may need, if your pad is much louder than your 808, you might need to turn down the volume in vital of your pad sound, or turn down the track volume for the pad. Turn up the 808. And this is where it comes in handy to use a reference track to try to match the levels of the different elements, right? Let's see. Oh, I know we're a little bit over time here, but one final thing we could do to clean this up is sidechain the 808 to the pad, so the pad ducks out of the way when the 808 hits. So compressor on the pad sound. Now we're sidechaining from the 808. We'll again use the high pass because we just want the initial tick from the transient to trigger the sidechaining. Then we'll bring down the threshold. Sounds like this. Yeah. So, gotcha. Okay. Right. Okay. So I know we're at time, a little bit over. But that's the basics of how you would construct chords. You can look up chord progressions online to get, ideas for different chord progressions. You can also try experimenting on your own. Use the use the circle of fifths. Pick a wedge of 6 chords and then experiment with different, building different chords and what those sound like. A good amount of time to spend on a given chord. I mean, it varies by song, of course, but you can spend 1 measure on a chord or like 1 beat or 2 measures. So the homework assignment is going to be to take a EDM song, or even it doesn't even have to be an EDM song necessarily, but just one that has a really strong melody, and then you're going to find a chord progression that works for that melody. And I realized that we didn't quite get to the melody part of this lesson, so but we talk about it in the tutorial. So I'll share the tutorial with you all afterwards. So yeah, take a song you like that has a really strong melody, and then make a little remix of that melody. Make sure that it has some chords behind it, which you can either look up online or maybe try to figure them out by ear, or have fun with it, like try to find a reharmonization of that melody that sounds good. And then make like a little drop mini remix of that song. And again, the tutorial has an example where I go through this. We didn't get to talk about stuff like quantization of rhythm, like when you're playing notes in live. Yeah, so that's the homework. Any last questions before we adjourn for today from anyone? I'll wait here for a second. Could you explain more of what you mean in the email by reharmonizing? Sure. I mean, just very briefly, it's choosing different chords than the ones that are in the original version. So if I keep the melody the same, but I change the chords that are underneath it or behind it, then I have reharmonized that melody. So that could be like another way to push it further if you want to keep playing around, like take a melody, put a chord progression behind it, see how that sounds, then try putting a different chord progression behind it and hear how that like new harmonic context changes things up and makes different qualities of the melody come through. Aaron, I saw you typing something. If you got a question or comment, feel free to weigh in. And thank you, Adam, for attending. Yeah, I guess I thought you had already sent the recap email. Now I'll send the recap email later tonight. Like I said, the homework is going to be to take a song that you really like that has a strong melody, like something that you would sing along to, something that gets stuck in your head, something where you maybe know it so well you can hum it yourself, and then you're gonna make a little miniature remix / cover of that song. Load up a synth sound in a Vital or piano sound, whatever sound you like. Type out that melody, put some chords behind it using the techniques we talked about here, put a bass underneath it, put a drum beat behind it, and try to make a 16 to 32 bar drop based on that melody. Awesome. Glad you had a great time, Chica. Thanks again for attending. Next week should be in person again. So cool. Well, if that's all, thanks again. Okay, thank you, Aaron. All right. I will see all of y'all at the next session. Thanks.